Welcome to the Mystery and History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. On May 21, 1945, Colonel Byrd, responsible for the Belsen camp, ordered the destruction of the last lodging there. While the structure was set on fire using special equipment, the flag of the United Kingdom was raised. A symbolic salute was performed in honor of the victims. Inside the lodging, objects linked to the former regime were consumed by the flames. The image, recorded in June 1945, marks the close of an important chapter of history in that region. On December 7, 1941, in Hawaii, a United States naval base was the target of a surprise attack carried out by forces of Japan. The action took place in the morning with the aim of preventing a possible American response to movements planned by Japan in Southeast Asia. This moment marked an important turning point in 20th century history. The image represents the beginning of a new phase in the international involvement of the United States. On April 29, 1975, in the final moments of the Vietnam conflict, a large group of civilians was photographed trying to climb the wall of the United States Embassy in Saigon. They sought access to the helicopter boarding area used for evacuation operations. The image shows the urgency and desperation experienced by many during the last hours before the transition of control in the city, which would later be called Ho Chi Minh. This record became one of the most well-known of that historical period. On April 29, 1975, members of the United States Navy aboard the USS Blue Ridge were photographed pushing a helicopter into the sea near the coast of Vietnam. The action was carried out to free space on the deck and allow more evacuation flights from Saigon to arrive. The moment occurred one day before the official end of the conflict, marked by the entry of Northern troops into the city of Saigon, now called Ho Chi Minh. The image symbolizes the urgency and scale of the withdrawal operations in that final period. On April 30, 1975, a northern military vehicle passed through the gates of the presidential palace in the city of Saigon, officially marking the end of the southern government. This moment symbolized the end of the conflict and the transition of power. The city of Saigon, now known as Ho Chi Minh, came under new authorities after this event. The image became one of the most emblematic records of that historical period. May 1945, during actions on the island of Okinawa in the Pacific. It shows American soldier Terry Moore seeking cover while explosions occurred nearby in a moment of intense movement in the field. The battle for Okinawa was one of the most significant of that phase, involving great logistical and human effort. Conditions on the ground were challenging, requiring constant attention and quick responses from those involved. The image portrays the tension experienced by those present on the front lines. It shows the reality of extreme situations and the courage of people who acted in settings marked by pressure and uncertainty. On March 30, 1965, embassy staff and security agents were photographed observing damage caused by a car incident in front of the United States Embassy in the city of Saigon, Vietnam. The area was seriously affected and many people were injured. The recorded moment shows the effects of one of the most striking episodes of that year in the city. The image reflects the climate of tension that dominated the region during that period. On September 9, 1940, an image recorded the High Holborn area in London after an air raid. In the scene, damaged buildings can be seen, and a local double-decker public bus is completely destroyed. The record was made during a period known for intense air actions over the city. The image shows the visible effects left on the urban landscape and the direct impact on residents' daily lives. On On December 1, 1945, General Anton Dostler, commander of a German military corps, was photographed tied to a post in a yard in the city of Aversa, Italy. He had been tried by an international commission after events recorded during the period of conflicts in Europe. The trial took place in Rome and was based on decisions he made in March 1944 in the city of La Spezia. The image represents one of the first moments when military leaders were held accountable for their actions after the end of the fighting. In 1945, a Japanese man was photographed amid the charred remains and rubble of what had been his home in the city of Yokohama, Japan. The scene shows the visible impact left on the area after intense events of that period. The image records a moment of silence and rebuilding as local residents faced the challenges of starting life again in settings marked by destruction. On February 25, 1968, civilians slowly walked among the rubble in the streets of the historic city of Hue, Vietnam. The photo was taken right after weeks of intense fighting during a major offensive that marked the beginning of that year. During this period, Hue became one of the main centers of confrontation, with clashes that lasted nearly a month. The scene reveals damaged streets, destroyed buildings, and visible marks left by the prolonged action. On January 1, 1966, women and children were photographed crouching in a muddy canal in the Bao Tri region, about 19 miles west of Saigon, Vietnam. They sought shelter during a moment of intense confrontation in the area. The image shows the vulnerability of civilians amid a scene of tension. The conflict extended for several years and ended on April 30, 1975, with the entry of Northern forces into the city of Saigon, now called Ho Chi Minh. In the mid-1960s, during an operation in Southeast Asia, a photographer recorded an intense moment as the first rescue helicopter arrived on the scene. In the image, a sergeant can be seen with arms raised, a medic carrying the wounded, and a young man lying on the grass. The scene happened in seconds, demanding speed and precision. The photographer managed to capture 3 images before everything changed. The result was a powerful portrait of action, urgency, and humanity in a single instant. Between November 14th and 17th, 1967, soldiers were photographed descending the slope of Hill 742, located about 5 miles northwest of the city of Duc Tho, Vietnam. The terrain was steep and covered with dense vegetation, making movement slow and challenging. The image records a moment of tactical maneuvering in a region known for intense clashes during that period. The soldiers' effort reflects the focus and preparation required in operations carried out in mountainous and hard-to-reach areas in Southeast Asia. On May 15, 1975, a member of the Navy and a United States Air Force rescuer were photographed running toward an HH-53C helicopter. The scene took place during an operation on the island of Koh Tang in Southeast Asia. The mission aimed to rescue the crew of an American cargo ship called Mayaguez. The image shows a moment of action in one of the last episodes recorded after the official end of the conflict in the region. On May 12, 1945, the ruins of former Special Force lodgings were recorded in the city of Berchtesgaden, Germany. The structure was part of a set of residences and underground tunnels located in an alpine village in Bavaria, used by government leaders of the time. The place had been hit by aircraft in April 1945, in the last days of conflict in Europe. In the image, smoke can still be seen coming from one of the nearby residences, showing the recent effects of destruction. On June 6, 1944, Allied troops landed on a beach in Normandy, northwestern France, during the operation known as D-Day. The image shows British soldiers moving up the shore, carrying heavy equipment as they organize under mist and tension. This operation marked the beginning of a major offensive to retake occupied territories in Europe. The photo portrays a decisive moment with intense movement and the collective effort of thousands of fighters. In 1946, during the trials held in the city of Nuremberg, Germany, high-ranking political and civilian leaders were brought before an international tribunal. The photo shows the inside of the courtroom where the trial of the main defendants took place, with 24 people being prosecuted for their actions during the period of conflict. In the image, Hermann Göring can be seen seated in the center to the right, wearing a gray coat, headphones, and dark glasses. Next to him are Rudolf Hess, Joachim von Ribbentrop, Wilhelm Keitel, and Ernst Kaltenbrunner. In April 1947, an overall view was recorded of the International Tribunal convened in Tokyo, Japan. The trial had begun on May 3, 1946, conducted by representatives of the Allied countries, with the goal of assessing the actions of 28 Japanese civilian and military leaders during the conflict. At the end of the process, some defendants received prison sentences, while others were given more severe penalties. The image shows an important historical moment marked by the search for accountability and justice. In 1946, an image recorded ENIAC, considered the first general-purpose electronic computer. The machine, weighing about 33 short tons, was installed at the University of Pennsylvania in the United States. Its development began in secret in 1943 with the goal of performing complex calculations for military purposes. ENIAC was presented to the public on February 14, 1946. In the same year, its creators began a series of lectures known as the Moore School Lectures, which helped spread the foundations of electronic digital computing. In 1946, an experimental aircraft known as the Northrop XB-35 was recorded in flight in the United States. With an innovative flying wing design, the model was developed for the Army Air Forces during the last years of World War II. Despite the promising project, it was ended shortly afterward due to technical challenges. The image shows an example of the search for new aviation technologies in that period. On May 12, 1945, United States soldiers were photographed on a German jet aircraft, the Messerschmitt Me 262. The aircraft was found in a field near the city of Innsbruck, Austria. According to records, the plane had light damage caused by its own pilot. This type of aircraft was one of the first jets used in air operations. The image shows a rare moment shortly after the end of military actions in the region. On May 25, 1945, a United States soldier was photographed examining a statue made of solid gold in a cave near the city of Schönau am Königssee, Germany. The location was discovered by members of the 7th Division of the American Army. The cave hid various valuable items, including rare paintings from several European countries. The image records a moment of discovery amid the search for works and goods kept in secret during the period of conflict. On November 8, 1945, a record photograph was taken of Hermann Göring, former commander of an important German Air Force and a leading figure in the government of the time. The image is part of the files of the Central Registry of Suspects in Paris, France. Göring had surrendered to United States soldiers in the Bavaria region on May 9, 1945. After that, he was taken to the city of Nuremberg, where he faced an international trial for actions committed during the period of conflict. On July 21, 1954, a plenary session was recorded at the Palace of Nations in Geneva, shortly after the signing of the truce agreements for the Indochina region. In the image, delegations can be seen gathered around the main table. From left to right are the delegations of the Soviet Union and the United Kingdom. At the next table are representatives of Laos, France, and Vietnam. With their backs to the camera are the delegates of Cambodia, and to the left are the representatives of the United States. The photo marks an important diplomatic moment in the international negotiations of the period. On November 23, 1972, United States presidential advisor Dr. Henry Kissinger was photographed beside Le Duc Tho, the main negotiator for North Vietnam, moments before the start of private talks in Gif-sur-Yvette, on the outskirts of Paris. In the center of the image is Nguyen Phu Quang, a member of the North Vietnamese delegation. The photo records an important moment in the attempts to reach a diplomatic agreement during the final phase of negotiations. In June 1943, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill was photographed making the victory sign in front of number 10 Downing Street in London. The gesture became a symbol of determination and confidence during World War II. The image was captured at a decisive moment when the United Kingdom stood firm in its participation in the collective international effort. This record became one of the visual icons of British leadership at the time. On July 30, 1969, President Richard Nixon was photographed surrounded by members of the 1st Infantry Division of the United States at a base located about 12 miles north of the city of Saigon, Vietnam. The visit took place during an official trip to the region with the aim of closely observing troop activity and maintaining direct dialogue with the military. The image records a moment of closeness between the president and soldiers on duty. In 1968, during the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, thousands of demonstrators filled the streets in protest against the events of that period. Meanwhile, President Lyndon B. Johnson and his family followed developments from a distance, watching everything from the bedroom of their residence in the Texas countryside in the town of Stonewall. The image reflects the contrast between movement in the big city and the quiet observation of the national leader in his private space. On November 20th, thousands of demonstrators walked through the streets of Oakland, California toward DeFremery Park. The demonstration was organized by a group called the Vietnam Day Committee and began at the University of California, Berkeley. Participants wanted to continue to a military base, but a court decision blocked entry to the site. The police estimated about 8,000 people at the protest, while the organizers believed that more than 12,000 would take part. The image shows a major moment of social mobilization in the United States during the 1960s. On October 29, 1967, residents of the city of Wakefield, Massachusetts, took part in a demonstration supporting United States policies in Southeast Asia. The crowd held signs and American flags, expressing a position in favor of the government's decisions. The demonstration was organized by Paul P. Christopher, a 19-year-old local high school student who decided to act after seeing protests against the country's involvement in the region. The image shows a moment of civic participation and youth engagement during a period of intense debate. On January 15, 1968, a group of women joined a march in Washington, D.C., led by former Congresswoman Jeannette Rankin, known for her activism. In the image, they hold a banner expressing their opposition to the United States' involvement in Southeast Asia. In the background, other participants and the Capitol building can be seen. From left to right, the women carrying the banner are Ruth Krause, Mrs. Vel Phillips, Wen Griffin, Ruth Warwick, and Lucy Montgomery. The photo represents a moment of social mobilization in a symbolic place of the American Capitol. On February 13, 1975, during the Lunar New Year holiday, a group of National Assembly members held a protest on the steps of the official building in the city of Saigon, South Vietnam. They used torches to burn images of President Nguyen Van Thieu as a sign of opposition to the government. The demonstration renewed calls for changes in leadership and raised criticisms related to public administration. The image records a moment of political tension in the last months of a defining period in the country's history. In 1966, United States Army helicopters were photographed arriving at a support area located about 50 miles northeast of the city of Saigon, Vietnam. They provided support to ground units during operations in the region. The record shows air movement during an intense phase of the conflict in Southeast Asia. The city of Saigon, now known as Ho Chi Minh, underwent major changes until the end of the conflict on April 30, 1975. In June 1970, United States soldiers of the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment were photographed celebrating as they returned to South Vietnam. They crossed the northern border of Cam, passing a damaged sign after an operation carried out in the neighboring country's territory. The action, authorized by President Richard Nixon between April and May, aimed to locate and dismantle areas used by armed groups. The image shows a moment of return after weeks of intense movements in the region. On May 4, 1967, General Creighton W. Abrams, on the left, was photographed greeting General William Westmoreland upon arriving in the city of Saigon. On that occasion, Abrams stated that he would assume the role of direct assistant to Westmoreland in several areas. The image marks the transition of responsibilities between two important military leaders during operations conducted in Southeast Asia. The record symbolizes the continuity of command and coordination of the strategies adopted during that period. In 1954, young local fighters were photographed in the Red River Delta region in northern Vietnam. They carried equipment attached to their belts and prepared for possible clashes with forces approaching the area. The image portrays a tense moment in a period marked by territorial disputes and organized movements in the region. This record shows the direct involvement of local residents in defensive actions during that year. On March 23, 1954, French paratroopers were photographed landing near a fortified base in the Dien Bien Phu region, Southeast Asia. The action was part of the defense efforts organized during a decisive moment in the local conflict. The image records the moment when the troops arrived on the ground to reinforce strategic positions. This episode became one of the most striking of the foreign military presence in the region during that period. In 1918, during World War I, American soldiers were photographed in a trench in France while cutting barbed wire fences. The action was part of the advance through heavily protected areas on the battlefield. The image shows the effort and preparation required to make way through difficult terrain. This type of operation was common on the battlefronts of that period. Between approximately 1914 and 1915, the U-10 submarine was photographed at high speed. The vessel was part of Germany's naval fleet during World War I and operated in sea missions. The image was captured by Bain News Service and shows the submarine cutting through the waters with force, highlighting the growing role of this type of technology in naval operations of the time. The record is an example of the advancement of naval means at the beginning of the 20th century. On May 28, 1943, a technician was photographed examining Bolton-Paul gun turrets damaged in air combat and accidents. The structures, used by Royal Air Force Bomber Command aircraft, were being inspected at a repair facility of the Ministry of Aircraft Production in England. The image highlights the essential role of technical work carried out by civilian professionals, including women who directly contributed to the maintenance and quick return of aircraft to service during the conflict. On December 16, 1940, de Havilland DH-82C Tiger Moth basic training aircraft were photographed in the assembly stage on the production line of the de Havilland Canada factory, located in the Downsview region of Toronto, Ontario. These single-engine, two-seat planes were built to serve the Royal Canadian Air Force and the Royal Air Force. The image shows the inside of the industrial plant in full activity, illustrating the effort of the Canadian aeronautical industry in supporting pilot training during the period. On September 11, 1945, two former Allied prisoners were photographed gathering their simple belongings after being freed near Yokohama, Japan. They were rescued by members of a United States Navy humanitarian team. Even visibly weakened, both showed relief and joy at the end of their confinement. The image marks a moment of reunion with freedom a few days after the official end of military actions in the Pacific. On June 9, 1945, General George S. Patton was photographed waving to a crowd during a parade in downtown Los Angeles, California. The event was held in honor of the returns and achievements of the recent period. In the background, a panel with the famous image of the flag being raised on Iwo Jima, captured by Joe Rosenthal, appears in prominence as part of a support campaign. Shortly afterward, Patton returned to Europe, where he faced administrative decisions that generated debate. He died in December of the same year after an accident. On September 21, 1945, Japanese munitions were dumped at sea during the demobilization process, carried out after the end of the conflict in the Pacific. The action was part of the measures adopted during the occupation period by the United States. At that moment, a large part of the industrial structure aimed at military purposes was deactivated. The image records a symbolic step in the transition to a new phase in the country's history. In April 1975, members of the National Guard in Da Nang, including women, were recorded encountering local fighters after the city was taken. In the last days of March, important cities in the northern part of the country's south, such as Hue on March 25th and Da Nang on March 28th, were also occupied. These events were part of a large movement known as the Hue Da Nang campaign. Shortly afterward, on April 29th and 30th, 1975, the city of Saigon was also taken, marking one of the most significant moments in the country's modern history. In May 1945, United States soldiers were photographed sitting in small steam trains at the Prater amusement park in Vienna, Austria. In the background, the famous giant Ferris wheel of the site can be seen, one of the largest in the world at that time. The area where the photo was taken had been the scene of intense clashes days before. The image records a moment of calm in a place marked by important events during the last days of conflict in the city. In July 1945, 2 months after the end of fighting in Europe, General Charles de Gaulle was photographed greeting children in the city of Lorient, France. The city had previously been used as a naval base by foreign forces. Between January and February 1943, the region was the target of intense air actions that left much of the city destroyed. The image represents a moment of reunion and hope amid the rebuilding of a community marked by loss and deep change. On December 23, 1944, and published in Life magazine in June 1945. It shows a group of people in custody, positioned behind a cell block in an environment under the watch of responsible officers. At the time, the individuals had been tried after accusations of involvement in secret activities in a conflict context. The scene reflects military procedures and disciplinary measures adopted during periods of high tension and reinforced security. The image is a historical record of actions taken in exceptional situations, revealing little-seen aspects of organization, accountability, and rules applied in conflict settings. Paris in August 1944, during a tense moment in the city streets. It shows people on alert, seeking shelter, or watching carefully after an incident in the middle of urban movement. At that time, Paris was going through decisive days tied to the retaking of control of the city. The population and organized groups took part in coordinated actions, while the environment was marked by uncertainty and risk. The image captures a moment of attention and immediate response. April 1, 1945, shows a German aircraft sound detection device located near the city of Heidelberg. The equipment was captured by American forces in the last months of that period. Before the invention and practical use of radar, several countries developed acoustic devices to try to detect enemy planes at a distance. These devices worked by amplifying sounds in the sky, allowing operators to identify the direction and approach of aircraft. April 5, 1945, and it shows United States Army soldiers gathered shortly before being sent into action in the city of Heilbronn, Germany. At that moment, military engineers were working to build a temporary bridge over the Neckar River while facing strong resistance from local forces. Crossing the river was an essential step for the troops' advance, but it posed a great challenge due to the exposed terrain and the constant presence of attacks. The soldiers waited for orders, aware of the risks they would face in the hours ahead. American soldiers of the 9th Infantry Division of the United States, known as the Old Reliables, crossing a river in the Saigon Delta near the Rach-Kien area during Operation Enterprise. They hold their weapons above the water to protect them as they move cautiously through the flooded terrain. Operation Enterprise was a security and stabilization mission carried out in Long An Province in southern Vietnam between February 13, 1967 and March 11, 1968. The goal was to reduce the presence of enemy forces in the region and support pacification efforts in local communities. On May 13, 1945, a United States soldier was photographed in the basement of the Burger Breukler Brewery in Munich, Germany. This place was known for hosting important meetings of a former German political party. During the conflicts in Europe, the brewery's cellars were used as an underground shelter and also as a space to store documents. After the end of the fighting, international teams arrived and found various historical materials organized. The image represents a moment of discovery at one of the city's most symbolic sites. During a record made in the period of conflict, photographer Paul closely followed soldiers in moments of tension and fatigue. In one of the most striking images, a young United States serviceman, about 18 years old, stands guard over a small group of civilians. Among the civilians are children, elderly women, and a mother nursing her baby. The image reveals expressions of weariness and uncertainty on everyone's faces, showing the human impact experienced by people on both sides of that historical moment. Around 1944, during World War II, 2 American soldiers were photographed in training in the United Kingdom. One aims with an M1 launcher, popularly known as a bazooka, while the other positions around at the rear of the weapon. The image shows a tactical exercise carried out as part of troop preparation for future operations. This type of equipment was used mainly to hit armored vehicles in combat. On July 19, 1966, members of the North Vietnamese forces were photographed during target practice training in the Vach Dang region near the city of Hanoi. The activity was part of the military preparation carried out amid the prolonged conflict in Southeast Asia. The image shows the exercises being conducted in a natural environment, reflecting the focus on training and readiness of the troops. This type of training was essential for performance on the battlefronts throughout the period. On August 22, 1963, United States military personnel were photographed serving as advisors to the armed forces of South Vietnam. At that time, about 14,000 Americans were present in the country, supporting actions against groups crossing the border from the north. The United States government believed victory would come through strategies adapted to the local environment. However, there were concerns about administrative instability in the city of Saigon, which could affect operational results. The image reflects a decisive moment in American involvement in the region. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please use the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us keep bringing you amazing historical content. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video.